there is something nearly everyone can do to contribute to the freedom and privacy on the internet. If you have been wondering what could you do to contribute if you do not have some technical skills such as programming or money to donate or things like that, well, if you have internet bandwidth to spare, then that is something that you can also contribute. You see, by running an I2P node on your system, your computer, you can contribute to the anonymity network, that is I2P, which basically gives its users a means to anonymously communicate with other I2P users out there in the world. I2P, it is something that gives the users basically anonymity. They can connect to any other I2P user out there, which means that any connections that users can make with each other, whether file sharing or looking at web browser stuff, websites and all kinds of things, anything you can do on the internet, you can do on I2P. And this means that basically I2P, in some sense, kind of gives you a parallel internet to the regular internet that people use. Or rather, it's an alternative way to use the internet, one should say. I2P basically gives its users anonymity. So, it is freedom and anonymity because by giving the users anonymity, they have the ability to be free and they have all the privacy. So, I2P is good and you should contribute to it. And also, here's the thing, even if you don't use I2P yourself, that is still true, you should still contribute to it, because you're still contributing to freedom and privacy on the internet. And if that's something you want to do, then that's something really easy to do. You can just install the I2P software and then just have it run on the background. And then it will do its thing. You can just leave it alone, you don't have to worry about it or think about it. Just have it run in the background and it does its thing. And now you are contributing to freedom and privacy on the internet. So that's something really easy and simple. All you need to do is install the software and just make sure that it runs on the background every time you start the computer, basically, unless you want to manually start it. This speech exists to point you to the direction that there is something that you and basically almost everyone can do to contribute to freedom and privacy on the internet. Now, I say nearly everyone because if you have limitations on your internet connection, such as a data cap, then something like I2P might not necessarily be the best idea, because you are obviously donating your bandwidth. So, in that sense, if you only have a very limited bandwidth, that might not be a good idea. But for the most part, most people don't really have such things as far as I'm aware. And, well, actually most people, well, that depends on where in the world these, quote, people, unquote, are. So anyway, if you have, let's say, an unlimited data connection and some fiber optic cable, for example, that basically gives you unlimited internet. There is no data cap, and if you pay a constant rate in currency for the use of that optical fiber, regardless of how much you use it, well, then you might as well make the most out of it. You might as well use it as much as it can be used. And since you're going to be paying for it anyway, and you're going to be paying the same amount even if you don't use it much, then that is definitely something that you can donate to a good cause. That is an excellent idea, I say, because that sort of thing, you don't necessarily use it all that much. Where like a bunch of this internet connection that people have, there's lots of potential, but people are not necessarily utilizing this potential to the fullest. And yeah, well, especially with scenarios like Well, obviously, like when it is night time, when you're going to sleep, then you're not going to be using the internet, for example. So things like that. Whenever you're not using the internet, you can have some computer running that contributes to the I2P network. So something like that is a really good idea. Now I don't know if you are going to do that sort of a thing where you have a computer continuously running, but you don't have to do that. You can just as well use your regular desktop computer, or I suppose some mobile smartphone things can also do something, but I don't know much about those devices. I'm not really interested in them. You will have to figure that stuff out yourself. But anyway, even if you're just using a regular desktop computer, you don't have to have the computer running continuously for the rest of eternity. Every time you turn it on, it contributes a little to the network, and then when you turn it off, it's just not gonna contribute anymore for the time it's off. But all the contribution still helps, because the more people are on the network, the better. And there are lots of reasons for that. You see, if there is an entity that has lots of nodes under their control, the more nodes they have in control, the more likelihood there is that people who are using the I2P network will end up using those nodes that the entity is having under their control, which means that they can do various traffic analysis attacks against the users of the I2P network. So this can be countered by just having so many I2P nodes out there in the world that it becomes practically impossible for any single entity to have such a large number of nodes under their control relative to the amount of nodes out there in the world in general, that it would be of any use for them to attempt such traffic analysis attacks. For example, this all meaning to say that it also just in general just increases the privacy, because the more nodes there are, the more different routes the traffic can take. The more people hosting the I2P nodes out there in the world, the better.